Yo, what is up guys, Ghost here, welcome back to the channel. Once again, we have even more information coming out for Battlefield 2025, the next Battlefield game. We don't really know what it's going to be called at the moment, it hasn't been officially announced. So at the moment, I am going with Battlefield 2025, but regardless of that, we got a bunch more details here coming out of Tom Henderson over at Insider Gaming. Lots of interesting tidbits from locations to factions to maps, features that are going to be in the game, and a lot more. So as always, we're going to delve into all of that here on the channel. If you do enjoy the content here, guys, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Plenty more to come out of me on the next Battlefield game and beyond. And as always, your support is ever so much appreciated. So cheers, guys, for that. Really, honestly, means the world to me. So thank you. So first things first, bit of a disclaimer guys, these are not official details from DICE or EA, these are leaks coming out of Tom Henderson, who some of you may be familiar with, but for those of you at the back who aren't, he is known for leaking many things within the gaming community, so much so in fact that he actually ended up starting his own publication around it, which is a website called Insider Gaming. Now, I'm not going to go ahead and tell you that all of these leaks are spot on and correct, but what I will say is that my experience with dealing with leaks from Tom Henderson and his team is that they have been, I would say, 80 to 90% correct. In fact, months ago, he already leaked the fact that the game was going to have a lot more destruction, it was going to go back to 64 players, the class system was coming back, and that it was going to be set in the modern era. And lo and behold, all of those things have just been confirmed to us by Vince Zampella just the other day. So yes, absolutely, these are leaks, this is conjecture and speculation, so take it with a grain of salt, but I'm just saying, he's been right most of the time. So let's go together now and take a look at his article. So he starts off here by saying that Zampella also confirmed a new experience from Ripple Effect, which Insider Gaming has already reported will be Battlefield's take on a new free-to-play Battle Royale to tie in with the game's premium release, akin to how Call of Duty found success with Call of Duty Warzone. Now that's not really new, some of you may remember that from some time ago when he reported on that, and now the fact that he's been right about everything else, again, I'm not sure where Tom and his team get their sources from, or really why those sources actually give him information to begin with, like is he paying them? I don't really know how it works, but whatever the reason, most of his sources seem to be legit, and so the fact that the rest of the stuff turned out to be correct leads me then to believe that Ripple Effect may indeed be working on a Battle Royale. Now, whether that ticks a box for you or not is, I think, something each and every one of us are going to have to look inside and make a decision on. I've never been a big fan of Battle Royale. I don't especially want a Battlefield Warzone. I don't know, it's just a game mode that's never really, lit any fires inside of me and really made me thirsty to play it. Maybe I'm just too old or I don't have enough friends, I don't know what it is, but I just kind of want a regular Battlefield game. That being said though, as long as it's not going to be detrimental to the regular Battlefield game, I'm not inherently against a Battle Royale either. But as always guys, leave me your thoughts on that down below, let me know, are you sort of for or against this, and always remember this is a leak, so it may not turn out to be true anyway. So what is new in this post then? So he goes on to say that Insider Gaming understands that the game will take place somewhere between 2027 and 2030, which is in keeping with it being a modern game, of course, with the campaign focused on a massive private military going up against NATO. So that actually sounds eerily similar to what we saw in Battlefield 2042, doesn't it? The NOPATs are, for lack of a better term, really just a PMC, and them going up against NATO is basically like what we saw with them going up against, Wolf in, I'm not sure how much you guys actually know about the lore of 2042, it wasn't really a big part of the game for a lot of people, I don't think, so maybe nobody really has a clue what the story of Battlefield 2042 was. But don't worry, that doesn't mean that specialists are coming back, and indeed Vince Zampella has confirmed that they are going to go back to the regular class system. So the game is going to be set in various locations worldwide, including Gibraltar, as seen in the game's first release concept art, so he's confirming there that that is indeed correct if you guys were watching my video that I put out yesterday, and the USA, which is also believed to be the setting for the Battle Royale experience, and it's going to be a tropical location, so somewhere in the south then has to be. That's pretty cool. I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there have really been any Battlefield games or maps within the US of A. So that's always nice. And then it bears mentioning that Gibraltar, a lot of you guys commented on my video yesterday, you were like, Ghost, Gibraltar doesn't belong to Spain, it belongs to the Brits. How could you do us like that, man? Well, yes, Technically, Gibraltar is an overseas British territory, but what I meant is that it's part of Spain. It's literally connected to Spain. It's on the southern tip of Spain, so that I'm trying to convey to people where it is in the world, right? But yes, it technically belongs to Britain, so maybe we could see a British faction there? So he continues here saying, let's cut to the chase and talk multiplayer. The aim is currently for 45 different weapons on launch, double that of what Battlefield 2042's core multiplayer experience launched with. And in addition, the goal is for around 10 multiplayer maps, putting it in line with the likes of Battlefield 1, 3, and 4. So that's really great news. I honestly expected nothing less. I think a lot of us forget that was one of the core problems with Battlefield 2042. That often gets overshadowed by the fact that the game released in such a terrible state and it had to be really worked up to get it into a decent state where it was actually playable, that we forget the fact that the game also released with a pitifully small amount of content if you compare it to past Battlefield games, and then of course all of these subsequent seasons that were released had a pitifully small amount of content as well. One map for almost all of them. There was 2 right at the end there, but let's face it, one of them was pretty much just like a rehashed map, right? We got part of the stadium that was previously part of the Hourglass map, so I'd really call it 1.5 maps to be honest with you. But nevertheless, DICE took a lot of flack for that. It's been one of the big points of critique around the game, so it's absolutely instrumental that they get this correct in the next game. Not only do they launch, like they're saying here, with 10 multiplayer maps and around 45 weapons, I think that's a good number to start with, but then after that, when they start releasing their seasons, and they have confirmed, by the way, this is going to be a live service game, so anybody who was hoping for a comeback of the premium service, forget about that. It just ain't gonna happen, I don't think, much as I'd love it to. It is imperative that every single season they're giving us, I want to say like 3, at least 3 maps. 2 is like an absolute bare minimum. 3 is okay, and if they can do 4, that's fantastic. I really hope they're going to go for 4, and they've heard our wishes as people who like premium, and that's the number that they're going to aim for. To be honest, I wouldn't even care if they decided to charge more money for the Battle Pass to give us more content. Obviously, less people would buy it then, but I think there'd be a lot of people who would buy it anyway, and perhaps would appreciate the increased amount of content, the fact that DICE Neo were going the extra mile, and may feel better about actually giving them some extra money. Now that being said, they may also go the other direction where perhaps they have 2 maps in a season, but they release those seasons on a much more regular cadence. I think that could really work well too. Okay, so let's continue here. He says the game will also see a significant overhaul to its destruction, and while I couldn't verify if this means the return of Levolution, over half a dozen sources mentioned that the game would have caliber-based destruction akin to Rainbow Six Siege, with different calibers causing different amounts of destruction. So the way I understand this, as somebody who has never really played Rainbow Six Siege, the higher caliber bullet that you're firing, the more damage it's going to do to a building, and presumably some of them are going to be able to penetrate through walls, and finally we're going to see maybe more bullet penetration in a Battlefield game. I think that would be a really welcome addition for a lot of players. On the topic of Levolution though, I would say it's almost a given. You could argue that Levolution existed in Battlefield 2042, right? Because if we look at Orbital, we had the rocket going off there. Sometimes it exploded, sometimes it went up, and that changed the way that the level evolved, hence Levolution. But looking at the first concept art screenshot we got there with what looks like either wildfire on the hillside or a volcano going off, I would assume that some sort of Levolution is going to come in there. I don't know how we are supposed to trigger wildfire or a volcano by ourselves. Surely that's just an event kind of like tornadoes. It's a natural disaster that's just going to happen, or it won't. But either way, it might be something that's interesting. I just hope they're not going to make it like Hourglass where, you know, you ended up in a sandstorm. So in theory, sure, it sounded kind of cool, but in practice of actually being in that sandstorm, especially if you're a pilot, it was pretty terrible to play. It wasn't a lot of fun, and it didn't look very good either. And looking at the wildfire there, and assuming there's going to be a lot of smoke that accompanies that, I can't help but feel the same thing. I really hope they're not going to put Levolution in the game just for the sake of it, to the detriment of gameplay. So he says, it's also understood that the game will see changes to movement, with one example given by multiple sources, the ability to pick up and move downed players. While that has almost certainly been incorporated for the Battle Royale experience, it's been implied that this is all of the changes and is a part of the team's Battlefield Moments initiative to bring back the moments that made Battlefield well, Battlefield. Not sure I like the sound of that. I don't think Battlefield moments should be artificially created. I think they should happen naturally. It's supposed to be a grassroots thing, the way it naturally occurred with Ronda-Zooks and all that sort of stuff. DICE weren't planning for that, right? The community made those things happen. You made those things happen. We made those things happen. It wasn't DICE, and I feel like if they're trying to artificially create that, that's not a good way to go. That being said, though, I think being able to pick up and move down players is a very interesting mechanic. Notice here he doesn't say body dragging, he literally says being able to pick them up and move them. So that's kind of cool if you can actually take a soldier up on your shoulders and run with them behind cover. I believe this was a feature planned originally for Battlefield 5, but it never made it in the end. So to wrap up here, he says, I've also been told that the team is currently weighing up the name of the game. Over the past year or so, the team has been carrying out mass surveys, some of the biggest I've heard about, with participants voting on which game name they prefer, Battlefield or Battlefield 6. So fingers crossed, we might not have to wait long until that is officially announced. Finally, regarding large-scale community-driven testing, which they referenced a number of times over the past couple of days, I am very much inclined to believe that this is more than just an open or a closed beta, but rather the return of the Battlefield CTE, which really helped the development of Battlefield 1 and 4. So for anybody who isn't familiar, the CTE stands for Community Test Environment. This was first implemented during Battlefield 4's lifespan because the game was kind of a bit of a train wreck really when it first released. There were a lot of things that needed changing and needed to be worked on, but they did that through this CTE initiative, which involved a testing server. And what they would do is bring out a patch for the game, and before it went to the live servers, they would bring it to the CTE server. And players like you and me could hop on that server, help DICE out with the testing, give them feedback, they would then iterate upon that feedback, and finally release it to the live servers once they and we were happy with it. And that is why Battlefield 4 and Battlefield 1, which also benefited from this system, ended up being two of the best Battlefield games ever to date. So if that's coming back, absolutely fantastic. On the topic of the Battlefield name, I'm at a bit of a crossroads as to what the name of the game should be. If it's the natural progression of things, then Battlefield 6 should be the next game. If you think as Battlefield 2042 as a bit of a spin-off series similar to Hardline or Bad Company or 2142, and then you've got the actual mainline series of games running alongside it, then surely Battlefield 6 should be the next one. However, maybe it's almost poetic that DICE want to hit the reset button and finally bring us the Battlefield game that we've all been waiting for, and that would really make sense to just call it Battlefield then. But on the other hand, I think it's going to make things super confusing, because if you're like telling your friend, hey dude, have you played Battlefield? He's going to say, well, which one? And you're going to be like, well, just Battlefield, the Battlefield, the new one? Like, how do we even talk about these games anymore? It's going to get so confusing. Yes, I'm going to feed you soon. Calm down, cat. Anyway, very interesting stuff there. Like I mentioned at the start of the video though, guys, take this with a grain of salt. I'm also pretty confident a lot of this could be correct, but also bear in mind that even if it is correct, this is just the state of the game at the moment, or when Tom and his team last heard from whatever sources they got this information from, right? So there's no knowing if some of these things could change during the pipeline of game development. A lot of these features could be completely left out of the game, even if they were originally planned. Look at Battlefield 5, for example. So yeah, just once again, putting that out there. But guys, leave me all of your thoughts down below. I would really like to hear what you have to say about this. Are you excited for the next Battlefield game? Are you cautiously optimistic? Or have you still just completely lost faith in DICE and EA, and you're just going to wait until the game comes out and then, maybe even start thinking about it at all? As always, guys, thank you so much for sitting around and listening to me waffle on for about 8 minutes or so. Always appreciated. Have a good one, and I'll see you guys in the next video.